Thanks, Greg. I'm overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed when they told me I was going to be inducted, but this is incredible. Two apologies. Number one, I had my blazer cleaned, ironed, hanging on the door, ready for me to pack. And maybe it's age, but it's still hanging on the door. So my other apology is I feel bad the way I look. This is not me. I've gained a lot of weight this last year due to some medical things, but I promise you, I'm going to lose it and get back into shape. Greg showed and mentioned this was our Bible, The Mechanics of the Pole Vault. And this is from 1959, the fourth edition from 1959, 1960. And I'll guarantee you there's not one fiberglass pole in here. This is the way we learned. There was nothing written on fiberglass. We had no clue what to do on fiberglass. So it was trial and error. And you know what happens when you do trial and error. There's a lot of errors. And you know, we said, well, maybe I'll try this. And as you pick yourself up off the ground, you say, I'm not going to do that again. That didn't work. I started back in 1958. I had seen the pole vault, I think on TV or something, and it looked like it'd be fun. And I was helping my dad. We were clearing brush and tree limbs and went down to the Pasadena city dump to dump all that stuff down. And there was an old bamboo pole laying at the dump. And I said to my dad, can I take this home? And he said, yeah, sure, throw it in the trailer. So that's what I did. And I started pole vaulting in the backyard. Onto grass, and this is where I learned the first lesson I ever knew about the pole vault is pole speed. And if you've ever listened to me at clinics, I emphasize pole speed. And the reason is because in the backyard, my mom had a row, about a 4-foot wide row of rose bushes, and then about a 5-foot high picket fence, and then 4 feet more of rose bushes. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to clear this by a lot. I just had to have pole speed to get over those things. So that's what I worked on. But I think the first time I really got an idea of that I really want to do this, my dad took me to the final Olympic tune-up in Mount Sac. And this was the 1960 Olympic tune-up. And Ron Morris, here, he was in that group, and all these guys are coming down the runway, and they had sawdust, and it was steel poles, clank, clank, clank. And then there was a guy that came down the runway, and the end of his pole was just doing this. And I said, what the heck's going on? And it was Aubrey Dooley, and he had a fiberglass pole. And I'd never seen one before. And he took off, and I never saw what happened because I fell off the end of the bench. This thing bent. And I got up and I said, what happened? He said, he made it. I said, oh my God. So the next jump, he was up. And I decided that I was going to hold on to the bench. And this is Mount Sac by the pole vault. And he jumped, and that thing bent, and he made the bar. And I looked at my dad and I said, I gotta get one of those. That's really neat. So that's what I did. It was a great meet. Ralph Boston broke Jesse Owens' world record in the long jump. We had Bill Nieder broke the world record in the shot. Rink Babka tied the discus record. There's just all over the place. And if you can't get excited about that, here's a kid. And, I was just flabbergasted at what I saw. And So I continued and wanted to do that, kept going in the backyard, went to junior high school, Swedish steel pole, got to high school. And my first week there, they had a motivational speaker that came in to talk to us. And it was a brand new high school, first year open. The auditorium was out in some dirt field with a few bleachers around it. And Bob Richards showed up to speak. And that was it. I was hooked. It was great. And those things are memories that I have that really kept me going. Greg and I met, in the summer meets, LA summer meets. The coaches in the summer from LA city schools would travel around. They put pits on trailers and all this, and they would travel every night of the week in LA. There was an all-comer meet. And I tried to go, probably jumped 3 or 4 times a week at different places. And so I showed up at one of the early places, and they had a foam pit, and then they had a sawdust pit. And so I walked over to the foam pit, and I said, I want to sign up for the vault. They said, well, what's your best? And I said, 12.6. He said, well, you have to make 13 to be able to jump into the foam pit. So the next night I went to the next meet, walked over to the same guy and said, I want to sign up for the pole vault. And he said, you were here yesterday, weren't you, at the other meet? I said, yeah. He said, well, I told you you have to make 13 before you get to jump into the foam. I said, I made 13 last night, and I want to jump here. He said, well, you don't want to jump. These guys are jumping 15.6. I said, yeah, I want to jump here. And he said, well, you're going to get beat. I said, I don't care where I want to jump here, and this is what I'm going to do. So I did, and I jumped with Greg and Ron Morris, those summer meets, Pierce, John Pinnell, Mel Hine Jr., Phil White, John Rose. It was great. And so I went to City College in Pasadena, and there was a girl in my biology lab, and she looked over and she says, nice jumping yesterday. And I said, how does she know me? And so we chatted a little bit. She says, well, my brother's a vaulter. I said, oh, really? Who's that? It's Sam Kirk. Well, probably not very many of you have ever heard of Sam Kirk. But I think Sam was the 4th man in history to jump 17. His best going was 16.3. We went to a meet at Mount Sac, evening all-comer meet, and I got my first 16-foot vault at Mount Sac. So Mount Sac holds a pretty close place to me. So I made 16, my first time ever. I was really happy. Sam made 17 feet that night. His PR going in was 16.3. He made 17 feet. So we drove back to Pasadena and went into Sam's house, and his dad was there reading the paper, and said, well, how did you boys do tonight? And Sam said, well, Dick made 16 feet. And he said, well, that's just great. I'm proud of you, Dick. So, and I said, yeah, and Sam made 17 feet. And he said, bullshit. He didn't believe it until he read it in the paper the next day. And about 2 weeks later, he did it again. And he helped me. He really helped me a lot. I never had a coach before I jumped 17. But Sam helped me as much as he could, training-wise and stuff. And we had a lot of fun. PCC, I set a national record in the vault, and also was on the 4x1 relay team that set a national record. So that was a lot of fun. Set a national record there, 16.5.5. Then went to UCLA, and my mom was really against me going to UCLA. She thought I should go to a smaller school, Division II or NAIA, I don't know. And I could probably go to our old house and point to the spot in the backyard where my mom and I had this conversation. And she said, wouldn't you rather be a big fish in a little pond instead of a little fish in a big pond? I said, Mom, I want to be a big fish in a big pond. I'm going to UCLA. So that was a lot of memories back then. Competing in the Pac 8, I won that one twice. Now I got to interject one story. When I was at UCLA, this is back when we actually went down on the tarmac, loaded our poles ourselves into the plane. There was nobody shooting at us or anything. And we'd unload the poles on the tarmac again. And LA, people that have flown into LA, they have these satellites all over, and you gotta go a long way, and it all goes under the runways. So you're in the satellite, we got our poles, we're in the satellite, and now you have to go down the escalators. And it's a long way down. The escalator is one straight shot, but the ceiling in the satellite is up pretty high, and it follows along for a while, and then there's a wall that comes down, and then the ceiling goes on. And Jonathan and I are on the escalator and talking and chatting and stuff, and I dip my pole a little bit, and so it would go under that part where the wall comes down, and Jonathan didn't dip his poles. So all of a sudden you hear this clunk, the poles hit the wall in the front. And then you hear this clunk, they hit the escalator in the back. And John's trying to pull his pole, and they're not moving. Then they're just getting bent and bent and bent. And I dropped my poles, thank God there was nobody below me. I just let them slide down. I bailed out onto the concrete steps. And bam, bam, because we only carried 1 or 2 poles back then. So we walk out to the buses, Coach Bush is there, and I got my poles. Jonathan has his poles, but both ends are dragging. And he said, what happened? I said, you don't want to know. So that was a little experience traveling with poles. I'm sure that other people have better stories, but that was an interesting thing. 68, first meet of the year, jumping on a pole that was kind of an experimental pole that Herb Jenks made. And if Herb handed you a pole and he said, jump on this and you'll make 18 and you might not ever walk again, he said, well, give it to me. I'll jump on that. And this was an experimental pole that he came up with, and if you're familiar with the poles back then, usually if it broke in half or maybe 3 pieces, and this thing literally exploded, and hundreds of pieces, and the shock wave, and you boulders, if you've broken a pole, you feel like Wile E. Coyote, just hit a tree and it goes through your whole body, and so it shattered the bone in my left hand. And so I had to have a cast on. Of course, that's the Olympic year, 68, and can't jump in any meets until I'm cleared. And so I had 2 meets before, actually I had 1 meet. I qualified for the Nationals, went to Sacramento, won the Nationals, went to Tahoe, tied for 2nd at 17 feet, and got 4th on misses. And that was a tough one to take. But the next year I came back and set a PR and jumped 17, 8 3/4, and had a lot of fun with that. It was great. Let's see. Got my PR at Lake Tahoe. It was when they moved the old track or the Olympic track down to a junior high school in Tahoe. They had an Indian Summer Games, and I jumped 17, 8 3/4 there. Had 50 meets between indoor, outdoor, and summer meets in Europe. I had 50 meets that year, and my last meet in Lake Tahoe, I set a PR. Jumped through 70, 71, 72, made the finals. Had a lot of injuries. 73, ended up getting a spinal fusion.